Hello guys, welcome to another video from AK Academy. It's Ahmed Muzaffar with you. In the previous video, we have initialized the solution and created three projects. ASP.NET Core API, .NET Standard Shared Library, and a Universal Windows Platform as a client application. Today in this session, we are going to create a simple database, install all the required packages before, and initialize the ASP.NET identity with JSON Web Tokens authentication. So let's get started. First, by going to dependencies, manage NuGet packages, and first let's start with Entity Framework. Go search for Microsoft.EntityFrameworkCore. Okay, let's install the last version. Make sure if you are working on .NET Core 3.0 to install the 3.0 version, otherwise you will get some errors or incompatibility issues. Hit install. Okay, done. Let's install AntityFrameworkCore.Design.SqlServer. Accept again. And then .tools, which will give us all the required tools to deal with the database from package manager console, like update the database, create migrations, and whatever. Okay, now let's install AspNetCore.Identity. Install, accept, and identity.EntityFrameworkCore, accept, and the final thing we want to install is ASP.NET-Core.Authentication.JWT period. Install, accept. Okay, very nice. We are all done. Right now, let's create our database. To achieve this, I'm going to use Entity Framework Core code first approach. So I will create the model, then Entity Framework will create the database for us. First, let's go to app settings.json to create the connection string. Here, let's create a connection strings object. Okay, sorry. Okay. Call it connection strings object. I'm going to give it a name called default connection. Now the connection string. The SQL Server instance that I have on my machine is SQL Express. So server equals to dot, which means local, then SQL Express database equals auth demo db integrated security equals to true because I'm using Windows Connect. I'm using Windows Authentication to my server. So, okay. Click save. Now let's create our models. I'm going to create a database that contains set of employees. So I'm going to create an employee class, employee. Okay. Public class employee. Create the properties. Create the primary key integer, employee ID. By convention, when I create a property that's of type integer and the name of it is equals to the class name in addition to ID, so Entity Framework will map this as the primary key and auto increment. Then create public string first name, okay, set, okay, string last name, string email address, string phone number. Let's keep it simple. We are done from our model. Okay. Save. Now let's create the application DB context, which is the environment of the database or the layer that are going to connect our models with SQL Server and vice versa. So call it application DB context. Okay. Because we want to add identity to our project. Identity implements its own application database, its own DB context, and it's called identity context. Identity DB context, sorry. So it provides us with 6 tables that manages everything related to users and its profiles and their profiles. Okay, let's create a constructor that takes DB context options, and add that to the basic class constructor options. Done. And then let's create our table public dbset employee get set. We are done like this. The first step is to initialize our services here in the startup file in configure services. First of all, configure Entity Framework with SqlServer. Okay, services add DB context type application DB context. We have to use the namespace. Okay. Options. Use SQL Server. Now let's get the connection string from the configuration. The connection string and default connection. Okay. We are done from configuring the DB context and the database. Right now, let's configure the identity. We are going to say services.add identity user, which is the class that represents the user, and identity role that represents the roles. Okay. Here we can configure the settings of identity like password, strength, and many other options. Let's take a look. Options.password required digit, let's set it to true. Options.password required lowercase equals true. Sorry, I have to update this with a comma. Options.password required length 5 at least, and you have too many other options, but that's enough for now. Let's call add entity framework core stores. Okay, application DB context. Let's call add default token providers, which will configure the token generator to generate tokens for email confirmation or phone number confirmation, and two-factor authentication that gonna be sent via mail service to the user. Now, we are done from identity. We can create our database right now by going to package manager and create a migration, which is called add migration, initialize database. Okay, it's going to create a migration folders for us here. Build succeeded. Done. Let's call update database. Okay, the database is ready now. Let's take a look. Okay, hit refresh. Nice. Auth demo DB. Let's take a look at the tables. Okay, in fact, we have created only one table, which is employees. But ASP.NET Identity provides us with many other tables. ASP.NET rule claims, rules, user claims, user logins, user rules, users, and user tokens. And the rule claims contains all the claims that are related to the role. In the rules tables, it contains the rule itself. Let's say the properties, ID, name, normalized name, and concurrency stamp. User claims contain the claims of the user. User logins, we can store the login operations that the user makes, especially from external providers like Facebook, Gmail, Hotmail. And user roles, the relationship between users and roles in ASP.NET Identity is many to many. So each user can have multiple roles, and each role could be assigned to multiple users. And ASP.NET users, which is the most important table for us. Let's check the columns. Here we have the ID, which is of type envarcher. The value of it can be an GUID, global unique identifier, auto-generated by identity. Username, normalized username. Email, we have as well email confirmed, true to false. Password hash, because the password is going to be encrypted. What also important for us, phone number confirmed, two-factor enabled or disabled. We have also lookout enabled, which means when someone try to log in multiple times and he fails, so you can lock his account till, for example, if he want to try again, he has to wait for a few minutes or something. So that's what lookout columns works. At the end, we have the tokens in this table here, and employees, which is the table we have created before. Okay. Now let's configure the authentication services, which is the JSON Web Token authentication. Let's say services dot add authentication default authentication schema equals JWT barrier defaults this library dot authentication scheme and auth.default challenge scheme equals to JWT period defaults dot authentication scheme as well. Now let's go add JWT period. Let's configure the options of it. Let's set up the parameters of the token. Let's say token validation parameters equals to new token validation parameter object. Okay. Here we have set of properties, which is the encryption key, the key that's gonna be used to encrypt the object, and what to validate, the claims that if this token could expire after a specific time or no, etc. What we are going to set is validate assure equals to true, validate audience equals to true, valid audience, let's set it to HTTP, and valid assure, okay, HTTP, Microsoft.NET as well, and at the end we're going to set require expiration time equals to true. We still need to specify the key. Now let's define the user assure signing key equals a new symmetric security key of the library identity model.tokens, right? So the key gonna be a byte array, so let's encoding system.text dot UTF-8 dot get bytes from the string. This is the key that we will use for the encryption. Nice. The key is just a string. This string encoded into a bytes array, and this is the assure signing key. Let's set validate assure signing key equals to true. That's right. Done. Right now we are ready to create register, login functions, email confirmation, phone number confirmation, two-factor authentication, reset password. Let's make a quick recap and a quick explanation. First of all, we have installed all the required libraries from NuGet packages, AsP.EntityFrameworkCore, EntityFrameworkCore.SqlServer.Tools, then AsP.NetCore.Identity, Identity.EntityFrameworkCore, Authentication.JWT period. Then we have created a very simple database by creating the model employee ID, first name, last name, email, and phone number. Then we have created the DB context. We have followed the code first approach. So we create the models, and the entity framework will create the database for us. We have inherited from identity DB context and not from DB context, because identity has its own implementation for identity DB context, which provide us with a set of tables that we need to manage all users and add the login functionality to our web API. Then we have configured Entity Framework Core by calling add DB context function in the configure services method. Then we have configured identity by calling services.add_identity, identity user and identity role. Identity user is the entity of the user that identity provides to us, and role is the entity of the role that identity provides to us. Okay, we have configured the settings of the password. We have set that the password require digits and require at least one lowercase character, and at least it's gonna be 5 characters length. We have added Add Entity Framework Stores, which have the implementation of Entity Framework Core. Then add the default token providers, which will configure the services the service to generate the tokens required to email confirmation, phone number confirmation, two-factor authentication, etc. Then we have created the database by adding a migration. We call it init database. Then we have called the command update database, which created the database for us. At the end, we have configured the JWT authentication by calling services.add_authentication, set the schema of this authentication. Then we call the function add JWT per year, set its options, token validation parameters, validate issuer. So when the server receives a token within the header request, the header of each request, it checks the issuer and audience of this token. If it's set to ahmedmuzaffar.net, so okay, it's a valid token. And this token require expiration time. For example, after the users log in and get an access token, this access token gonna expire after a specific time that we are going to define in the login function. Then we have defined the signing key, the key that we are going to use to encrypt the object and decrypt as well, because it's a symmetric key. Symmetric uses one key to encrypt and decrypt. At the end, validate issuer signing key equals true. So it should validate this signing key when it receives an access token. Okay, that was everything for this session. I'm going to make this project available on GitHub and share the link in the description below. In the next session, we are going to implement the register functionality from the API and then test it via Postman. At the end, we are going to create a very simple register form from our client and test it. Thank you very much for watching this video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below. And please, if you like it, hit the like button and the subscribe to AK Academy and stay up to date with every new video we publish. And thank you again. Ciao for now.